If today feels different, not intense, not pressured, but quietly new, this isn't random. Something has completed. The cycle you've been moving through, the clarity, the confusion, the expansion, the pressure, the results, has reached a point where it no longer needs to repeat. And now you're stepping into something else. Not completely unfamiliar, but not the same either. You may notice a subtle shift in your awareness, less focused on what just happened, less tied to recent outcomes, and more open to what comes next. Not in a rushed way, but in a natural one, like your attention is moving forward without effort. You may also feel lighter, not because everything is resolved, but because you're no longer holding on to it in the same way. The need to analyze, to correct, to manage every detail has reduced. And in that space, something new begins to form. Not fully clear yet, not fully defined, but present. A new direction starting to take shape. You might notice new thoughts emerging, new ideas, new priorities, new ways of approaching things that feel different from before. And that difference is what matters. Because you're not starting from zero, you're starting from experience, from everything that just shifted, everything that became clear, everything that showed you what works and what doesn't. So this new cycle is not random. It's informed, built on what you've already seen, refined by what you've already moved through. So if today feels quieter but different, like something is beginning without needing to be forced, it's because you're no longer in the same phase. You've moved forward, and now something new is starting from there.
What you're experiencing today is not a complete restart. It's a continuation from a higher level of clarity. The previous cycle didn't end randomly. It completed. It showed you what works, what doesn't, what holds, and what needs to be adjusted. And now, that information becomes your new baseline. That's why this phase feels different. Because you're not searching for direction anymore. You've already seen enough to move forward more accurately, even if everything is not fully defined yet. You may notice that your thoughts feel clearer, not in a sharp, intense way, but in a more stable way, less reactive, less influenced by recent pressure, less tied to what just happened, and more focused on what is next. That's the shift from processing to repositioning. You're no longer trying to understand everything. You're starting to place your energy again based on what you now know. This is where a new direction forms, not through sudden change, but through refined awareness, small adjustments in focus, subtle shifts in priority, a different sense of what matters. And those changes shape your next phase. You may also notice that your decisions feel quieter, less urgent, less pressured, but more intentional, because they're no longer driven by confusion or reaction. They're guided by experience. And experience creates a different kind of clarity, not based on possibility, but on reality. So what you're feeling today is not uncertainty, it's openness, the space where new direction can take form without being forced, without being rushed, without needing to be fully clear immediately. And that's what makes this phase important, because how you move now sets the tone for everything that follows, not from pressure, but from awareness. This is where today becomes subtle, because when a new phase begins, there's less pressure, less intensity, less urgency, less force pushing you in a direction. And that can feel comfortable, open, flexible. But it also creates a different kind of risk. The first trap is drifting, letting your direction form passively, moving without clear intention, following whatever feels easiest in the moment, allowing small unintentional choices to shape your path, because without pressure, there's less resistance. And without resistance, it's easier to move without noticing where you're going. That's how direction shifts quietly, not through big decisions, but through small, unconscious ones. The second trap is defaulting to old patterns. Even though the cycle has changed, habit remains. You may find yourself returning to familiar ways of thinking, familiar reactions, familiar choices, not because they're aligned, but because they're known. And when awareness is lower, what is familiar can feel like the right direction, even when it's not. There's also a subtler pattern today, underestimating the importance of this phase. Because it feels lighter, you may assume it's less significant, that nothing major is happening, that direction will become clear later. But this is the phase where direction is actually set, quietly, without pressure, through what you choose to engage with, what you give your attention to, what you begin to build again. And those small choices become your new path. So the real calibration today is conscious positioning, not reacting, not drifting, but choosing, even in small ways. You don't need full clarity, you just need awareness, enough to recognize what aligns with what you've already learned, and enough to stay with it. Because what makes this phase powerful is not intensity, it's direction being set without resistance, and that direction is shaped by what you choose now.
So how do you move through a phase like this without drifting and without forcing direction? You choose your starting point. Not everything at once, just where your energy goes first. Because today is not about building everything, it's about positioning yourself correctly. Start by returning to what you already know, what has proven to be aligned, what has remained consistent, what still feels clear even after everything you've moved through. That's your foundation. And from that foundation, you begin again. Not in a repetitive way, but in a refined way. You can also simplify your focus, not by limiting possibility, but by choosing one direction to engage with first. Because clarity strengthens when it's applied, not when it's held as an idea. So take what you've learned and place it into action, even in small ways. Because small actions set direction more effectively than endless thinking. You may also notice that your pace feels different today, less driven, less urgent. That's not a lack of momentum, that's freedom from pressure. And within that freedom, you get to choose how you move, not reactively, but intentionally. So don't wait for everything to become perfectly clear. It won't. Direction becomes clear through movement, through engagement, through what you choose to continue. You can also stay aware of what pulls your attention. Not everything that appears is part of your path, so check alignment. Before you engage, before you commit, before you invest your energy. Because what you choose now begins to build, quietly, without resistance, without pressure. And that's what makes it powerful. So today, move forward, not with urgency, but with intention.
because this is where your next phase begins to take shape.
Let everything settle here. Not to pause your movement, but to ground it. Because today was not about intensity, it was about direction. Beginning again, quietly, without pressure, without force. So take a breath, steady, controlled, unforced, and notice what remains when you're not trying to figure everything out. There's a different kind of clarity here, not sharp, not urgent, but present. And that presence is what allows a new direction to form, because you're no longer reacting to what just happened. You're starting to move forward from what you now understand. Not everything needs to be defined today. Not everything needs to be decided. Some of it is just beginning. And beginnings don't need to be fully clear. They need to be aligned. So, as you move forward from here, stay with what feels consistent, what feels grounded, what doesn't shift when you pause. Let that guide your next step, not everything else. Because what you choose now starts to build again, quietly, gradually, without needing to be forced. And that's what creates direction that holds. Not something reactive, not something temporary, but something that develops with awareness. So, carry that with you, this ability to begin again without losing what you've already learned. And if this helped you feel more clear, even slightly, return to it as this new phase continues to unfold. And if you want to keep moving through these shifts with more awareness, more control, you can come back here, each day not to restart completely, but to move forward with clarity that continues to grow.